Thank you for tuning in to the Ultimate Coach podcast, a companion to the transformative book, The Ultimate Coach, written by Amy Hardison and Alan D. Thompson. Each conversation is designed to be a powerful wake-up call, reminding us of what's possible for you and your life. So if you're on a journey to expand your state of being, this podcast is for you.
Welcome to the Ultimate Coach podcast. I am your host, Ipek Williamson, and today we have the privilege of speaking with an extraordinary guest, Amy Hardison. Amy is the heart and soul behind the scenes of one of the most influential coaches in the world, Steve Hardison. Together, Amy and Steve form a dynamic team inspiring countless individuals with their incredible synergy and dedication to personal and spiritual growth. Amy is the author of several impactful books, including and especially The Ultimate Coach, and its latest adaptation, The Ultimate Coach Concentrated. With a very rich background in teaching, writing, and a deep commitment to her family, Amy's wisdom and insights are sure to enrich our conversation today. Welcome, Amy, to the podcast. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you for your gracious introduction.
You are most welcome. Amy, it is indeed such an honor to have you on the podcast. Could you maybe start by telling us what inspired the creation of the Ultimate Coach Concentrated and how it is different from the Ultimate Coach book?
Yeah, so the Ultimate Coach, the original, I'm trying to think, maybe been out 2 years. And a young gentleman, like a 13-year-old from India, called Steve, and his name was Sassy. And he called him early in the morning with the time change. And he said, Mr. Hardison, I have this book, but I don't understand. Can you explain being to me? And as Steve talked to him, this young gentleman was so hungry to learn more, but he didn't speak very much English. He didn't read English, and so he really needed some help. So Steve contacted Ranjan and said, Ranjan, here's the background. I request that we help this young man. And Ranjan said, I'll get on it and get right back to you. And he texted him back the next day, and he said that he had committed to go with them word by word, sentence by sentence through the book so he could understand it. When I heard that, I was so blown away. I mean, that's hours and hours. And Ranjan has his regular life, his family going on top of that. And so I was just moved. And we were actually driving to one of our grandson's basketball games, and we were just talking, and Steve said, maybe we need like a teenage book or something. Maybe we can get someone to do that. I'm like, whoa, no. We don't get someone to do that. This is my baby. Yeah. And the reason why that's interesting is going into the Ultimate Coach, I kind of went into it kicking and screaming, meaning I knew this was what I was supposed to do. It was crystal clear, but I was so daunted by the amount of time and the work and the effort that was going to go into it. And I anticipated, maybe 6 or 8 really intense months. And it was 12 months of super intense work. And yet it was like, I just absolutely knew that was the thing to do. And this time there wasn't any resistance. It's like, no, this is my story. I'm the one who would know how to cut and where to cut and what needs to be there. So I jumped into this one. And, originally it was Alan Thompson's idea, and he did all of the research and shared it with us. And as he and Steve were talking, they're saying, this is going to be like 800 pages. It could be volumes. And as a writer, I'm sitting there going, oh my goodness, no, we can't have it be volumes. We need to shorten this. So when we got the Ultimate Coach down to 520 pages or whatever it is, that was significantly, I had to thin out a lot to get it to that point. And it took 2 years to set it aside to be able to come back with the rigor that's needed to cut things that you've already labored for and felt like they were perfect the way they were, And because you have to be almost heartless with yourself, and you have to be able to cut out things that phrases you fell in love with, stories you did. But what drove me as I was writing it is, in fact, in my mind, I'm thinking, I want to get this to half the length. And that means I am going to have to be super rigorous on everything that goes in. And when I sent the first draft my final draft to Chris Nelson, our editor, for the first time for him to look at it, he actually said, I think you cut a little too much out of the life story. So we put some stuff back in it. But my intention was to get it to half the length without losing the power and without losing any of creating the essence of who Steve is or the work that he does or what being is. And so that's not as easy as it sounds. But I think of, the quip or whatever, where someone says, I was only asked to speak last night. So, I prepared this talk. If I had more time, I would have made it shorter. Without less time, you get the whole thing. It takes a certain amount of real focus to say, okay, what is the point where only the essentials here, but the essential is all that's needed. You don't cut out too much. So that's kind of the background of how it went and some of the journey of creating it.
I really liked how you explained why concentrated, why you used that word. When I read the book at the beginning, you say that you concentrated it. And, when you have lots of things to say and lots of time or place to say it, it's easier. It's harder to make it more succinct and shorter. And that, I can tell, it must have been more challenging, of course. And on the other hand, it makes the book less intimidating for young readers, right? Because when you look at thick book, it's not that easy for especially young people to read such a big book. So I love how you brought down these two books down to the concentrated version, and I so love both of the books. I read the first one multiple times, and I read once the new one, and I see that you did a really good job in keeping the essence of what was intended to put out there.
And the other thing about it is, especially, I don't even know if it's just that I was looking for a younger reader as much as this was a second time through. And I really wanted to step up my craft, my ability to invite the reader into the story as if they were living it and seeing it through Steve's eyes. And so there's a little bit more dialogue, like early on in the family his personal history part with his family. And that's an interesting line to walk, because obviously I wasn't there, but I have been a member of the Hardison family for 46 years. And we have spent countless hours as a family gathered and talking about their memories. And I've heard all of the siblings share their viewpoints of what it was like growing up. And on top of that, when we got married, Steve's mom we were the only family that lived in Arizona, and she lived in Arizona. And we spent a lot of time with her. And she shared stories and shared things with me that were from her perspective. And Steve and I found out at one time, maybe about 20 years ago or so, that he had a great uncle that was alive, that was like 103 years old. And we took a trip back to Kentucky because Steve wanted to get to actually talk to some of the people that knew his dad, because he only has a couple experiences that he actually remembers. And when we went back and we talked to people, some of the things that I put in the second book were they were actual quotes. We talked to this one friend of Steve's father, and when we asked him, well, what was Steve's dad like? What were the Hardisons like? And he says, oh, those Hardisons, they were hard living, and that made it in. And so I recalled these different experiences, and apparently a lot of the Hardisons were hard drinkers, just a hard life. And Steve's father's parents were kind of the one exception in the family where they were church-going Baptists. They walked to church every single Sunday barefoot. They were just kind of different than the rest of the siblings. And so I wrote in the book that it's like Roy felt like he fit in better with the other Hardisons. So I'm creating the actual words, but they're coming out of real experiences. But because I'm creating some dialogue, I do feel like it especially brings a young reader in so that their experience is, well, I should say, so they're experiencing it versus reading it. You know, they are stepping inside and seeing the world through Steve's eyes. So I worked on that a little bit more in this version.
Yeah, thank you. Well, writing a book involves obviously tears, sweat, and hard work, but sometimes laughter too, I hope. So if I ask you about a funny or joyful memory from the process of creation of either one of the Ultimate Coach or the Ultimate Coach Concentrated books, what comes up for you?
Well, first, you explained it well. You know, the blood, sweat, and tears is all there. But it is thrilling. It is thrilling to come up with something. Or sometimes you can work all day on something. And I think I rewrote the very first few pages of the very first chapter multiple times 10 times for the first book. And it wasn't till the second book that I felt like, okay, now I finally got it, because those are your first chapters. And so when you get it, it's like you're usually like folding clothes, you know, or something. You've left the creative, you've left the jazz, and you are doing your life. And it's like your subconscious keeps working on the creativity part. And then it's just like this light goes off and you're like, that's it. That's what I need to do. You know, and so there's a lot of laboring over every word, but when it works, it's like this thrilling roller coaster, like as you're going down the hill and you get the speed, that thrill of speed that is like, this is so fun. You know, and so the creativity is exciting and exacting, both at the same time. And I don't know if this is funny, but I know there were some things I felt like it was really important when I wrote the book that people experience all the sides of Steve. And one of the challenges of Alan's version is he didn't know those, you know, and even people that he would have interviewed wouldn't have known those. There's no way he could. And I read Alan's version, and I thought what this needs is some of the reality of the pain, of the breaking down, of the, I don't know if I can go on, you know, some of the real hard things, because isn't that what makes life interesting, which makes people interesting? You know, we don't want to read a book about something where everything has always gone perfectly in their life and it's just this straight shot to success, because it feels unreal. It's like, well, that's nice for him or her, but I could never do that. And it's like, oh, read this story. And that's interesting, you know. And so there were times I would write a chapter and I'd take it to Steve and I'm kind of waiting for him to read it. And it's like, is he going to let this one go? He's going to let this go through, you know, because there were some, you know, really blunt things. And he was so generous and so gracious. And there were only a couple of things where he said, I don't want that in it. And they weren't big things. It was, John Deere made a comment about his dancing or something. And Steve's like, I love my dancing. So of all the things that could be in there, that was the only one that Steve's like, no, I don't want that one. So I thought that was funny.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Through the book, especially the second one, Concentrated, what are the key messages and takeaways that you hope young readers especially will gain from reading?
I think to give a teenager or a young person a book where they can see that they can create their life, and to create a document, to create everything that calls to them. It's not just, okay, here's what's given to you by your family or your circumstances. It's like, no, you are at the helm of your life, and this is possible. It's like that opens up everything, you know, to teach them principles about being their word and integrity. That for me, the crux to hand a young person is the ability to create their life. And yeah, I think that's the hugest gift and a blessing.
Well, you said it perfectly, because I so agree. We see a lack of core values, erosion of core values in the society. This book is talking about commitment, about integrity, about being your word, about taking action. So I see so much motivation that comes with everything this book stands for.
And I think it's important to highlight these things that will help them be really successful in their life and whatever career they do, but to also balance it with the fun part of Steve, the love part of Steve, the relationships, because all of that, if you just get all of this great success in business, but you don't have those other things, it's not the complete package. And then life isn't as rewarding and as sweet as it can be. So to bring in all of it and tie it all together, I think is important. And then, of course, his background is helpful for those kids that aren't growing up with ideal families. And there's a lot of that. So it's, part of it's saying he can do that, I can do that. And then, like you said, those different principles.
Absolutely. Where you started doesn't mean where you're going to end. And there are so many examples of people who are coming from hard starts, difficult starts to life, but it is possible. Life is filled with possibility, and anyone can thrive. So beautiful. It has only been a couple of months since The Ultimate Coach Concentrated got published, but have you had the opportunity to receive any feedback from any teenagers or young adults who have read it so far?
We've had some feedback. I have not gotten a lot of feedback because it's kind of new and it's kind of coming out a little bit more organically with it. But great feedback. One mother who read it who has teenagers said that she felt like anyone could read The Ultimate Coach Concentrated. Like this was for everyone, where maybe The Ultimate Coach maybe had a little bit narrower audience. For this, is, she said, everyone can get something from this one. So I've had some wonderful things come back, but I think we're just at the front end of that. And I'm not really keyed in. Like there's a little bit of me. It's like I've written it, we've released it, it's out there, and I'm back to my regular life, where I'm just really involved with my family and my responsibilities. And so I am not active on social media, which is kind of makes me a dinosaur in the world. But it was just a choice that I made because there's so many demands on time. And I think social media does so many really good things in keeping people connected. But I just made that choice for me. And I think that's where you get a lot of feedback. And there's just a little bit of, I'm okay, because I've done the best I could. And now it's out there and it is what it is. And if people love it and find great value, that's awesome. But my job's done.
So how has the process of writing this book, these two books, like when you look at your life before the Ultimate Coach book and the Ultimate Coach Concentrated book, what changed for you? How this process of writing those two books changed you?
It's been a huge shift from writing the book to where the Bean movement got started to where we're speaking in England and in India and Phoenix and other places and the Birmingham event. And for someone who didn't choose social media, all of a sudden there's all these worldwide connections. And we have met just the most amazing, wonderful people. And it's been so rich to know that our book has made a difference. But it's gotten really busy and with a lot more demands on our time. And, it's in a wonderful way. Everyone's like, oh, I just need a little piece here and a little piece here. And then finally, Steve and I said, we're going to have to pull back so that we can focus again on the things that are important to us, which is our relationship, our children, our commitments to our religion and things like that. And it's not like all these other things aren't wonderful, but in pulling back, we've kind of gone to our life the way it was before the book, which is just, there's just only so much of you that's available, and even writing the book, I just kind of had to disconnect from everything else, not time with my grandkids or not relaxed time really with my family. And it was just this real narrow focus for a year for the first book and for a few months for the second one. And then after we gave it to Chris and we worked on editing, it's not as intense. It's not like 8 hours a day, but the other is. And I felt like as I wrote The Ultimate Coach and then the couple other months for the Concentrated, my life was really out of balance. Like all I did was write. And, I'd write 8 hours a day. And then at the end, I'd just be mentally and physically exhausted. And I still had my responsibilities to handle. And Steve was wonderful and pitched in and did a lot of things to help and learned how to grocery shop and all kinds of fun things. But it was out of balance. And if I were to do it again, I'd do it the same way, because if I didn't, it would have taken 3 years to write. And it's really hard to break your momentum when you're going. It's harder and easier to put that concentrated focus on, and it keeps your momentum going. It keeps, and things would come into my life and I'm just like, I'm not available. I can't do that. I'm working, from, 8 in the morning until 5:30 in the evening every single day, Monday through Saturday. But that's out of balance. So I wouldn't want to do that consistently. So as we're moving back to a more balanced life. And I can't say that the experiences that we had being more involved were anything but amazing. It was just so rich, so many lovely, loving, amazing, capable, talented, world-shaking kinds of people we have been able to meet.
It literally exploded. Like as soon as the first book came out, it was like an explosion. And I can understand how overwhelming might be for you and Steve, especially as the people who are in the center of this whole attention that came with it. So I thought you guys handled pretty good. Okay, so now there's a question that I ask everyone. So as you know, both books have those infamous questions from Steve in the Before You Begin section and on the back of the book. And I see that the actually Before You Begin part of the Ultimate Coach Concentrated book are different than the first book. The questions are different. So keeping that in mind, which one of all those questions, deep questions, is the one you feel like you need to focus on at this moment in time in your life?
Well, the one that I am focusing on now, but probably always, it's like my ongoing question, is who would I need to be a more loving person? Because I feel like that's what life's all about. Like the whole journey of life, I would say you could probably boil it down into 5 fundamental paths. And for me, the path of how do I become more loving is just such a dominant path. I think it's so important. And it's such a rigorous process of taking the ego, meaning what I want, the way I think it should be, my ideas, my being right, and taking that and smoothing out those edges and creating space for other people. It's a lifelong process and it's not easy. And for me, it's like I'm always trying on new ways to access love. Not like every day, but I mean, you go through periods and you look back and the last several months, I have some questions that they came from a talk from one of our leaders of our church, but he said this, and this is what I've really been stepping into. He said, my hope today is to suggest some choices that may seem difficult. Pray for the love that allows you to see the good in your companion. Pray for the love that makes the weaknesses and mistakes seem small. Pray for the love to make your companion's joy your own. Pray for the love to want to lessen the load and soften the sorrow. of your companion. And so that to me is a refining kind of love. It's really about getting your own self out of the way and what you want. And I've been trying to step into that. And it's sweet and sometimes stretchy. And I think a lot of times when it's like, who would I need to be a more loving person? The first thing that comes to people's mind, and definitely to my mind, is your romantic relationship, your primary, marriage or partnership or whatever it is. But there's so many ways to love. And I currently have my oldest brother is 10 years older than I am, and he has dementia, and he's 74, but his dementia started at 68, which to me is way too young. And he was super physically active. He played tennis. He rode mountain bikes. He windsurfed. He surfed. He did mountain biking. I mean, he was just always active. He was always learning. He was learning new things. It's like he did everything you're supposed to do to help stave off dementia. And then here it hits him really early. And I have been going over since the first of the year, I've been going over and spending Wednesday mornings with him. So I'm there for 3 or 4 hours, and it has been one of the sweetest experiences of my life. And helping take care of my parents in their later years, where they ended up both with dementia, is definitely one of the sweetest experiences of my life. And I just love being able to go over to my brothers, and he loves World War II, and I love World War II. So we will watch documentaries and we will watch movies. And sometimes, it's like, yes, how can I even say this is a sacrifice when we go hang out and watch our favorite kind of movies? But it's more than that. It's that, like I got our family organized, our extended family organized, and we created a Shutterfly book where my siblings all gave us pictures and wrote about memories and about how they loved my brother. And I got our nieces and nephews, and they submitted pictures and memories for him. And so we created this book, and we'll go through it. And it's not like he'll read this book. It's like, oh, Rod, look at that. Do you remember when? Or do you remember having that bike? Or do you remember that when we did for Christmas? And it gives us a chance to talk about things he can remember, because often with dementia, you can remember way, way back. Other stuff you can't remember. But the space, when I am with him, all I can say is there's just pure love. There's no expectations. It's just like I am being with someone that I love, and my intention is to just have him feel love. And it is such a privilege. I go home each time just so, I just feel like I'm not grounded on ground anymore. It's just like this spiritual lift that carries me home. And I've thought a lot about this. And I think, love, as we expand love to stretch it, it's the hard love that stretches it. Easy love does not stretch you. The easy love, the falling in love head over heels, it's like, that's just awesome. It doesn't require the growth in that. And I have watched my brother go through this and thought, if you're the person going through it, you may think this is one of the hardest experiences ever. But here I am getting to be someone who loves and supports him. And I think this is one of the most amazing experiences ever. And it's calling us forth to be people that we haven't been and to connect. I've always loved my brother, and I love him more now than I have ever loved him. And I feel closer now than I've ever loved him. And it has had me question life, where we think life needs to look a certain way for us to be, fully actualized, to really thrive. And I'm looking at a situation, he's not thriving, and the love is growing in leaps and bounds. So I am learning that sometimes that we get to be the one who loves, and sometimes we get to be the catalyst for someone else to love. And we might not choose to be the catalyst, but there's real value in that. And, I thought if that was the only way my kids could experience the sweet, wonderful experiences that I have, would I go through it? And it's like, well, you don't get a choice. You either will or you won't. But I'm starting to see new facets of love that I didn't see just a couple of years ago. Because up till then, I would think dementia, that would be the worst thing ever. And now I think a new path for love.
Oh, this is so beautiful. Thank you for sharing this, Amy. And I had the privilege of spending a little time with you in person. And I must say, you exude love. Like when I look at you, when I'm in your presence, the only thing I feel is love and beauty that is coming inside of you, that is coming from you, and the light that is coming from you.
It's a path that we go on our whole life, and thank you.
So now I'm gonna ask you 3 rapid fire questions. The first one is, what is the dish you love to cook the most?
Homemade bread, because I love to eat homemade bread.
Ooh, so is there a specific, like a regular bread, or do you put any special things in it, like nuts and stuff like that?
I grind my own wheat, so it's super fresh. Sometimes I'll put dried cranberries and walnuts in it, and sometimes just plain whole wheat. But that's my favorite food group. So it's even kind of like I'll plan my meals. I'll start with my piece of homemade bread and then add all of the other things, all the other food groups around it. So that's definitely.
That's a given on your plate. But yeah, I love walnuts in bread, homemade bread. It's really delicious. Okay. Do you and Steve have pet names for each other? And if yes, what are those?
I find that I usually call him Sweetheart. Probably I call him Sweetheart more than I call him Steve. And I don't think I chose it. It just kind of evolved. And then he has a lot of funny names for me, like Pumpkinhead and Gesundheit Breath, and just, random crazy things that he does that he has a whole bunch of them. But yeah, Pumpkinhead's one.
Lovely. Okay, the third one. I know you and Steve traveled a lot, especially after the book was out. Which destination in the world that you visited so far had the biggest impact on you, and why?
That's hard because they were all so impactful. That it's like choosing your favorite kid. It's like that's a really tough one because of that. So I'm going to say I can't. We had events both in London, and I wasn't able to make it to the Birmingham one, but we had them in London and in Mumbai. And so I have to say, to step in to those rooms and see all the work that people had done for months and months and months, and everything. And in Phoenix, the Phoenix event's the same thing, where you walk in and it is so humbling. And I'm just in awe of the magnificence of people. And it's not about us, it's about the being movement, but it's kind of about us. We're kind of there. And so when it's like you have all of that to support you, it is extremely humbling in a wonderful way. And you just can't help but fall in love with these people. And I have never in my life, ever, ever, ever thought there would ever be a time in my life where I would be at a stage and I'd look over and there'd be a line of people that just want to give you a hug or just want to say thank you for writing the book. That is an incredible experience. And it's heart to heart, one human being to another human being. And more often than not, I felt like the people that were there to meet me were the women who wanted to share or wanted to thank me for representing a powerful woman in the world. And I like to say a powerful woman in a gentle way, a soft woman. Or people would say, I am married to a powerful man. Thank you for being your voice. I've had so many people say, thank you for speaking up so publicly about how important family is to you and how important God is to you. And their response is always, my family is that important to me. And that has been an experience I'll treasure my whole life. And it really is a magnificence of people it is just beyond expression.
Yeah, beautiful. So going forward, what is next for Amy? Is there any project, anything that you want to create next? What is in front of you?
It's almost easier to create a project than it is to not create a project. And what I am working on right now, in addition to my brother with dementia, there's 6 kids in my family of origin, and 4 have had cancer in the last 2 years. And they all have a good prognosis, like they've had surgeries and different things. But there's this very real feeling for me that time with the people I love the most is limited for my siblings. And when you look at our own kids and our grandkids, it's like your time even then is limited because they're growing up. And it's just this, for me, the preciousness of family and extended family, my family, and my relationship with Steve is really what I'm giving primary attention to. And I am trying to do less, love more, just be present to the joy that's there every day. And both of these books came to me to write. And so I kind of just have trust in the universe that if there's a project I really need to write, it's going to come. And in that moment, I will know it. Because I have thought and created things and I've done a little bit of groundwork for them. And it's like, no, that's not what I need to be doing right now. Right now is just focusing on the people I love.
I so love what you said. Do less, love more. It's so beautiful. And yes, whatever is meant for you will just show up right in front of you, right?
And I feel confident.
Yes, for that, definitely. Okay, if you were in my position right now as the host and had the opportunity to interview yourself, what is one question you would ask yourself that I didn't?
That is a great question. Because you've asked such wonderful questions and you've covered, I think, things that are really essential to who I am and wonderful, wonderful questions. So I will have to think about this for just a second. Because it's kind of like asking the question, is anything else that's left unsaid? I guess maybe the only thing, and I have spoken about this a little bit, is that one of the experiences I had in writing the book was stepping into something I really didn't know if I could do. I had written 2 books before this, but they were a totally different genre, totally different. So as I'm writing this book, I'm reading books, on how to do things, how to write this kind of book. And I never had the absolute surety that I was good enough to do it. And even as we got close to an end, and we had this amazing, wonderful woman who is an editor and a film producer and writes screenplays, all kinds of things. And she read it and gave us her feedback. And she was so kind, so kind. It took me till the next day that I realized she kind of said, it's not quite good enough, but I can help you if you want. And I really sat with that. And I thought, it might not be quite good enough, but it's mine. And I wasn't ready to have someone else fix it. It's like I could fix it. And people gave us feedback and I changed things and I improved it, but I didn't want to hire someone to do it. I still wanted it to be mine. But when I kind of realized that she said, it's not quite there. It would make a nice book, but you need a little bit more to have it impact the world. And it could impact the world. And I can just remember we were sitting at our counter at dinner and I just kind of flopped down on the counter and put my head in my hands and started crying. And I said, Steve, I've done the best I could. I couldn't do any better. And I said, I'm sorry, this is just my life. Always not quite good enough. Good, but not good enough to get it done. And, so I stepped into something that was bigger than I am. And then it kind of worked out. And we got some amazing feedback from capable, qualified people, friends that helped me improve it. And then, of course, we had Chris Nelson, who came in and is amazing to work with, and, could get his input on, just what makes it better. And so it worked out, but stepping into something that you're stepping into a gap and being willing to take the risk. And the risk isn't like, oh, what if I just can't do it? It's like, what if I spend a year of my life working as hard as I've ever worked on any project and it's all for nothing? But it's like, what else? What other option is there? If you don't do it, you'll never know. So it wasn't a sure thing. There was definite risk. There was self-doubt. And then there was just moving forward with it. And then the end result has been way beyond anything I could experience. So that wasn't necessarily a given outcome. But like I said, you don't know if you don't try.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And thank you for going for it. And so many thousands of people are benefiting from what you created. So thank you so much for your time. But what final piece of advice or encouragement would you like to offer to our listeners who might be maybe struggling a little bit with life's challenges these days?
Oh, there are so many challenges. I think I would say that life gets better. Like when something really hard is happening, it just colors everything. And I found that in my experience that within a day, it's going to be a whole lot better. Within a few weeks, sometimes it can take longer. But if you're in one of those really, really hard spots, then it's like it will pass. This too will pass. And all of these things become such an incredible richness in the fabric of our lives. And it's a cliche, but it is in those hard times where all the growth is. An amazing book that I totally loved is a book called More Beautiful Than Before. And it's by a rabbi named Steve Hardison. And he talks about that all of us go through hell at some point. We go through cancer, the hell of cancer, the hell of losing someone we love. He says, and the intention is to make our life worth the suffering, to come out more beautiful than before. And it's like, that's all there is. It's what we go through. And it's like, can we come out of this having learned life lessons that make me a richer, deeper human being, that allows me to have more compassion, that allows me to understand life? At the Phoenix event, I spent a great deal of time talking about the privilege of getting old, because we don't hit that in our society that worships youth and, all the vigor and the bodies that look like they're 28 years old instead of the 65-year-old body with wrinkles and, all of that. And I think the growing old is so amazing. And part of it is because you have all this experience. You have these hard things you've gone through. And Viktor Frankl talks about the hard things you've gone through. He talked about people wanting to be young. He says, I don't envy that. Who would want that? He says, they have dreams to dream. I have life. I have lived. And these hard things, those are the things I'm most proud of, though they would not incite envy. No one would want them. But, so I think the hard things are such a rich part of life. And as we go through it, and then we get to like my stage in life, you look back and those hard things are such gifts, and it's where we've learned. And it's what I know. I would never want to be 20 or 30 or 40 or even 50. It's like, this is the best because I have life lived with all of its ups and downs and good and the bad. And it's awesome.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much, Amy, for sharing your profound insights and stories with us today. Your contributions, both through your writing and your partnership with Steve, have truly touched and inspired so many lives. We appreciate your beautiful presence in our community. And for our listeners, if you haven't yet, be sure to check out the Ultimate Coach book and also the Ultimate Coach Concentrated book for enriching reads and especially the second one is suited for younger audiences. Thank you for tuning in to the Ultimate Coach podcast. Until next time, keep embracing your journey and making a positive impact on the world around you. Thank you once again, dear Amy. Thank you for being with me.
Thank you, Ipek.
Thank you for joining us today. If there's someone you know who could benefit from this conversation, please share this episode with them. Also, check out our website, beingmovement.com. You'll find valuable resources and links to connect to an engaging and wonderfully supportive community. Together, we can inspire and support each other on the path to a greater understanding of being. Until next time, take care and be kind to yourself.